As a longtime Yuri fan, I come across a lot of people interested in the genre who don't know where to start. Personally, I think a lot of you would really benefit more from learning how and where to tag surf more than from getting specific recommendations, but it's definitely easier once you're invested in the genre already. But there's also a very marked lack of variety in most of what gets recommended to individuals who ask, so I figured I could use my big brain knowledge about the genre to help people on their way. And to make it easier for people to find what they want, I'll organize it in starter pack format. You can mix and match as you please, but having a bunch of starter packs for different genres or subject matter should make it easier for those of you who really want to see what Yuri can offer beyond the basics. I'll also keep it to stuff that is officially licensed, whether it's already released or getting a release soon. For politeness' sake, please do not mention piracy sites by name in the comments. It's rude to both authors and pirates. And as with any recommendation list, know that my recs will be biased by my tastes in media. If you think I missed something, you can mention it in the comments. Or maybe make your own video? YuriTube is a little lonely right now, and it's not that hard to make simple videos if you have at least a laptop. But for my biases, I get bored easy, so long schoolgirl romances are very hit or miss, and I won't list a few classics that fit this because I just can't judge them fairly. There are ones I like, but there are definitely good ones I will miss because they're simply not my thing. There's also stuff I'll miss because I haven't read it yet. Yeah, sometimes it's daunting to start a series I know I'll like, so I just don't do it for a very long time. I also have a preference for manga, so while there will be anime, light novels, and visual novels in here, it will mostly be manga that may or may not have an anime adaptation. I buy books off Bookwalker for the most part, so if I don't mention where a book is sold, I probably found it there, and it's probably elsewhere too. I will also be counting stories that have strong subtext as Yuri for the sake of this list. I will note when a Yuri is subtext, but also, a lot of what gets called subtext is way too gay to ignore, and especially in stories that aren't focused on romance, straights often get treated similarly without so much questioning of their canonicity. Each entry I'll put the synopsis on screen, then say what I like about it, what I don't like, and mention if it's subtext. I'll also try to mention if bigoted tropes are involved and to what degree, but I've got blind spots and also might forget if it's not a major story beat or if I forgot, which happens with a lot of things. My memory isn't great, so if there's anything that will really piss you off or hurt you even in small amounts, still exercise caution. I'm trying to keep it brief mostly, so some may only get a couple sentences. But with that out of the way, let's start with the basics. Bloomin' to You. Started as a manga, there's an anime adaptation on High Dive, and a spin-off light novel trilogy. The weird psychological limbo you and Toko play with each other is quite entertaining, and the well-drawn kiss scenes don't hurt. The spin-off focuses on the side character and love triangle victim Seiki Sayaka, who is much more relatable to me. Nothing I especially disliked, but the main pair starts kinda dubiously consensual, which can put people off, though. I just find it too believable given my experiences with teenage lesbianism. Adachi and Shimamura. Started as light novels, there's also a manga and anime adaptation, anime on Crunchyroll. This one will be really hit or miss. As an autistic lesbian who grew up rural and developed attachment issues, it hits pretty hard though. Shit goes hog wild in the later volumes, but it's still fun, just a lot more surreal than you think it'll be on the outset. I personally prefer the novels because there's nothing better than seeing Adachi's brain completely dissolve from within her own mind. Adachi is so sad wet dog abandoned in a cardboard box in the rain coated, and I love her for it. The Moon on a Rainy Night. It's a manga. It's very cute. I can't vouch for how it portrays deafness, but from what I do know, it seems like a pretty decent portrayal. Sometimes the exposition relating to deafness for the audience is a bit heavy-handed, but it's not always happening, and I think it tapers out further in. They're very cute and really easy to root for. It's also very funny seeing Saki misinterpret her attraction to Kanon as ableism. Those things can certainly overlap, but girl, it's not ableist to be in love with a deaf girl, you just haven't realized it's love. Bocchi the Rock started as manga, anime on Crunchyroll. It's subtext entirely by technicality. Despite lacking a defined endgame main pairing, the lesbianism just oozes from the whole thing. Kita joins the band because she's horny for Ryo. Ryo attracts women as a matter of course, Bocchi fantasizes about girls being in love with her, and Nijika has Ryo attached to her like a barnacle. I am also not reading into or exaggerating any of this, it's all literal text. The animation is very creative, the comedy is on point, and when it wants to hit an emotional beat, it succeeds. Also, the songs are great and the adults are hot. The fandom is also nuts. Heaven for Death is a cool angsty fan game and also turned Nijiryo into an angsty supernatural metaphorical type pairing for a significant number of people. I recommend it, I'll link to download. Demon Girl Next Door started as manga, anime on High Dive. I'm biased, but this is a 10 out of 10 for me, one of my favorite anime and manga ever. It's such an optimistic story in the way that can only be achieved in a cruel world. It's technically still subtext, but only by the most stringent definitions. They are so painfully in love I can't stand it. By season 2, it's basically a rom-com. It's hard to put into words just how much love is in this show, and I'm planning a video on it even, someday in the possibly distant future. A small warning though, this is a surprisingly good racism metaphor, but I'm not certain the author is aware of this, or at least she definitely wasn't aware in the beginning. Why is a good racism metaphor bad? I mean, it makes things more interesting in a lot of ways, but also, some early gags that could have come across lighthearted to people who didn't catch that metaphor become fridge horror once you're a little further in, or immediate horror if you've caught on. Run Away With Me, Girl. It's a manga. This one's a lot more drama heavy, but if you want an adult Yuri romance with drama directly related to queerness, this is your guy right here. A pretty anxiety-inducing read for me, but in the good way. Throw Away the Suit Together, manga, coming to English in July. This hits hard when you're personally also fucking done with feeding yourself to the child-crushing machine in service of capital, even with the unfortunately rushed ending. Also, Seven Seas is lying. No way it's an American 15+. They fuck a lot in their cottage. There's a lot more that could go in this category, but I'm trying to pace myself. Revolutionary Girl Utena. Anime. Free on YouTube, uploaded by Nozomi Entertainment. Of course it's here. If you want to do queer analysis of animation, it's basically required reading and free on YouTube, so get on it. The music is great, the characters are also funny and silly until they're not, and it's scary and sad. And when it all comes together in the end in the sequel movie, yes it's a sequel, you feel in your bones why Uten Anthe is so iconic. You also realize why Anthe is the fan favorite character. She has a lot going on that is really interesting. Cons are there's a lot of serious topics covered. I think most or all handled well, but if you can't handle horrifying depictions of rape, pedophilia, incest, animal abuse, etc., even or especially when they discuss the realities of their harm, then sit it out. They aren't visually explicit, but at a certain point metaphors hurt more. Also, the Black Rose arc makes no fucking sense at all, and YouTube's comments only help a little. I know there's thematically relevant stuff set up, but it's tough to get through it. The Apocalypse arc is worth pushing through for, though. Flip Floppers, anime on Amazon for some fucking reason. Used to be Crunchyroll, then it was High Dive. Fuck these fucking companies, man. You can watch it as wacky bullshit, or analyze the hell out of it. It's fun either way. This hit extra hard in middle school. Seeing Kokona discover, accept, and thrive in her sexuality was great. And it still is, especially when it jumps genres every episode. Horror one week, mecha another, hard-hitting drama a third, all animated in beautiful and creative ways. Cons are the ending is either great or terrible, depending who you ask, and there can be some horny shots of these middle schoolers, so your mileage may vary. Yuri Espoir, just a manga. I don't see much discussion of this one, but it's so fucking good. The art is beautiful, and the angst with the time limit on Kokoro's ability to indulge in her lesbianism is fittingly painful and apparent. The setup lets you see a bunch of different Yuri dynamics with various good or bad endings. I also love the juxtaposition of how thoroughly this man is destroying Kokoro inside and out with how normal or even kind he comes across to his peers. He doesn't have to physically abuse or even talk to her to harm her deeply, so everyone thinks it's fine. Because that's what abuse is sometimes, often even. What is a whim for him is a death sentence for her, but nobody takes high schoolers seriously. He's a nice guy, she's certainly overreacting, right? But she isn't, they're underreacting. Review Starlight, anime on High Dive. The prominent themes are mostly related to the nature of stories, I think is what's agreed upon, but if you look at it with a queer lens, it also works. Got a video in the pipeline with that reading. The songs are great, the animation averages out to decent, except the sequel movie, which is god tier through and through. The movie is 10 out of 10 in general. Technically subtext, but if you have eyes, it's not. Mahiru is textually in love with Karen anyway. Her Tale of Shimchong, manhwa, currently on Tappytoon, but manhwa licenses are an ever-fluctuating nightmare. After learning about the true ferocity of the Korean gender war, I have only gained more respect for this author for such a frank depiction of systemic misogyny. The mind games among the noble women especially stood out to me, because despite the fact these women are doing genuine harm, it is made viscerally clear why they are pushed to these lengths. And as someone living in a culturally Christian society, there's often a fetishization of Buddhism as some kind of kinder religion. So it's interesting seeing the ways it can and has been used to cause harm just like any organized religion. I'm in love with The Villainess. Started as a light novel, then there's a manga adaptation and anime. The anime is on Crunchyroll. I still need to finish past the first couple volumes, but even with just those two I can attest it's a fun read. It's certainly got the jank of a web novel turned published, but you can really feel Inari hit her groove in Volume 2. Subverting expectations in some very unconventional ways as far as villainess stories go. At least, I haven't heard of many that go as far in this direction as this one does, and it's great. This Monster Wants to Eat Me manga coming to English stores in June. The monster designs are truly delightful, and cannibalism as love is always fun. I'm also a sucker for an MC who is just really sad and not recovering from it. But the star of the show is obviously the monster girls congregating around her. I can't emphasize enough how cool these girls look when they're morbing out. Sister and Giant, a young lady is reborn in another world. Manga, coming to English stores in June. I've only read a little, but it's looking very promising in the vein of violent fantasy Yuri. Same vein as Roll Over and Die, take that as a side rec because I don't want to crowd the fantasy list. I just love seeing a girl with no regards for her own safety growing a small party of outcasts, some of which may or may not be interested in her. And giants are cool on their own. But be warned, the giants culturally seem to be a noble, savage archetype, which is really not good. Issues with race, transphobia, etc. seem to be a theme with isekai and adjacent fantasy, and Yuri is unfortunately not an exception. At least the Yuri seem to think slavery is bad more often. It's a start. Mage and Demon Queen, webcomic on Webtoon. I'll admit it, I like it for horny reasons. But even if you aren't as horny as I am, it's fun to follow Mallory on her quest for the Demon Queen's heart, which eventually affects the entire struggle between humans and demons. It's a bit clumsy at the political aspects and some plot details, but if you can get invested in Vel and Mallory, it's not that big of an issue. It Gets So Lonely Here, visual novel on itch.io. Short since it was made for a game jam, however, it was made for the Yandere game jam and does it very well. The art is beautiful and so are the ladies. You get to choose one of 3 yandere girls to get the violent attention of. My personal favorite is the Gravedigger, but a lot of people also liked the Cannibal. The Mermaid's route is a little lackluster, but still a good time. Toho Project. With so much fan work, it exists in pretty much any medium you could want. The official stuff is just the games, bullet hell and fighting games, a few manga series, and the music albums. There is a frankly insane amount of high-effort fan media out there depicting these women in situations, and if you learn how and where to find it, you have what it takes to become a full-fledged Yuri warrior. If you're someone who wishes fictional women got the same respect as fictional men in terms of randos deciding their lacking canon characterization actually hides a complex inner turmoil, Toho Project is the right place for you. I started by looking for Toho Yuri Dojin and just flipping through them until I found various pairs I liked, but you could also look at the relationshipping page on the Toho wiki, not on fandom, and see if any dynamics click. Then look for Yuri of them. My personal favorite is the Hifu Club from the music albums. Seija and Shinmyo Maru are also great though, and Zanmu X Hisami is canon on Hisami's end and also hot. Really just explore. Music, fanfic, doujin manga, games, anime, etc. Sky's the limit when it's Toho. Side note, if anyone knows what happened to Utopia Beneath a Starry Sky or something that sounds like that, please tell me. I need my Rinmary. Heart of the Woods, visual novel on itch.io and Steam. There's also a free patch to add a couple sex scenes. This visual novel is very good at drawing you into this unsettling snowy village. The atmosphere is on point. The very end of it I found a little anticlimactic, but far from experience ruining. You can also patch some sex scenes in, but I haven't seen them yet. Also, Tara is transgender for people wanting trans Yuri. In general, if you want trans Yuri, itch.io is a good place to look. I still need to play Coquette Dragoon and Hopeless Junction, though I've heard good things. And Studio Elan made a bunch of other visual novels to check out too. The Executioner and Her Way of Life started as a light novel, has a manga and anime adaptation. Anime on High Dive. I've only read the first few volumes, but man, the concepts are so cool. Subversions of isekai tropes are commonplace these days, but you don't see Catholic assassins dedicated to murdering Japanese school children who wander into another world every day. And they have good reason for it too. With the information provided, it is genuinely a moral dilemma. Akari is great too. She's more than she seems at the start in some intriguing way. However, the prose is boring. I think the plot should have started in a different place, and the anime adaptation was a bit lackluster. Other Side Picnic started as a light novel, also has a manga and anime adaptation. The anime is on Crunchyroll. Supernatural sci-fi about Japanese creepypastas existing in an unsettling and mysterious pocket dimension. What doesn't kill you changes you permanently in ways you will never fully comprehend. Sorao is such a fun loser to live in the head of, and the prose and description works perfectly for both the horror and romance. The anime is silly, and the manga sounds pretty okay, but the light novel is the ideal experience since you get all of Sorao's maladaptive thought patterns in HD. Last and First Idol, just a novel. Hard sci-fi bullshit, now a 3-for-1 pack entirely composed of Yuri. The ideas are batshit insane, the women are morally questionable, the humans have transcended humanity in magnificent and grotesque ways. The prose is strange and the plotting nonsensical, but at least for me, something about the sheer creativity at work is just mesmerizing. Girls Last Tour started as manga, anime on Amazon Prime for some fucking reason. The end of the world seems so relaxing. The remains of the skyscraping city are beautifully decaying even in a world with no life left. It's more of a philosophical vibe than anything, so it's hard to say much more than just give it a shot. It's subtext, but Chito and Yuri have a special relationship outside of societal expectations, because there is no society left. Also, Shimeji Simulation, the kind of sort of probably sequel, doesn't have an official translation yet, but it's explicitly Yuri and also really fucking cool, so someone please get on that. Soundless, visual novel on itch.io. Heavy angst and violence, and I was debating whether it fits more in sci-fi or fantasy, but I think the vibe is more sci-fi. Inspired by the Denpa genre, it conveys that feeling of not knowing reality from fantasy or if you're going crazy until it's too late pretty well. Much like other Denpa games, especially ones retroactively labeled as such, it also suffers from indie jank and over-explaining its hand occasionally. The creators, Milk Plus Visual, have also made a few other Yuri visual novels you can check out. I still need to play them though. Qualia the Purple started as a light novel, has a manga adaptation. Both are good, but the manga might be a little more readable if you don't tolerate blocks of exposition well. You like hard sci-fi bullshit? Here it is, plus lesbians. Seems normal until shit gets wild, you'll know when you're there. Timeline hopping doomed Yuri. The con is it's hard sci-fi. There will be pages of exposition about physics that is half true, half bullshitting for the story, and entirely boring if you aren't into it. But if you are, it's great. Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, anime on Crunchyroll. Lesbian Gundam. I watched it as a standalone, so you can too. Sule Mio are great, and robot fights are a lot of fun. Core 1 worked really well at setting up its story. But Core 2 fumbled most of the themes and plot lines, but it's still fun enough if you know that ahead of time. Kanon, anime on Amazon Prime now for some fucking reason. And yes, I'm pronouncing it like that because the dub does. It's a lot like Licorice Recoil if Licorice sacrificed a little bit of romantic tension for more cohesive theming. Great action with a plot good enough to carry it. It's subtext, but you get a good bit of romance to work with. Kanon actually has two options for shipping, a cute dynamic with Maria or an enemies but weirdly horny dynamic with Alphard. It was quite funny watching this after Licorice and realizing, shit, yeah, I would've shipped Chisato and Majima if Majima were a girl. But I don't have to, because Alphard is objectively cooler and hotter. Licorice Recoil, anime on Crunchyroll. The action is tense and generally well done. The story carries it along perfectly for most of the anime, and Chisataki is just such an amazing ship with such perfectly depicted tension throughout. Downside is the story falls apart in the last couple episodes. The themes are what you'd expect from a buddy cop show, doesn't address the child soldier-shaped elephant in the room, and it's technically subtext. But, as with many subtext anime, it's subtext entirely by technicality. Did you know Takina almost has a wet dream about Chisato in the spin-off light novel? And while the ending was disappointing, it's nowhere near retroactively ruining the whole show. Just really clumsy. Murcielago, manga. Sex, violence, crime, everything I imagine you want if you're someone who complains about Yuri not being edgy enough. Kuroko is the most evil possible person you can imagine, which is both a warning and an advertisement. Murder, torture, pedophilia, sexual assault, you name it, she is not above considering it, even if her handlers rein her in before she can act. Regardless of how that bit makes you feel, the action is amazing, just a lot of fun to follow even when she's being despicable. It's also great because she's surrounded by girls who are also fucked up, but when they're next to her, they look practically saint-like. Magical Girl Lyrical Nanoha, anime franchise, seems to be on Amazon Prime for some fucking reason. To be honest, something about the structure and pacing of this show put me to sleep. Which doesn't change the fact that Nanofate is a god-tier pairing and they adopt a child together. Lots of people love this show, so I bet many of you would not have my issue, and would in fact love it a lot. So give it a try. Be aware that it gets a little weirdly horny about its child protag at the start, but if that's not a deal breaker, there's plenty of stuff to enjoy. Shy. Started as manga, anime on Crunchyroll. Superheroes, but the MC is an introvert lesbian. It's a very kid show premise, but sometimes it's nice to see a girl use the power of active listening to save someone while she gets her ass beat to a pulp. Subject to the same pro-status quo themes as any superhero show, but that's to be expected. Technically subtext, but if one was a guy there'd be no doubt. I mean, Teru's got girls throwing themselves at her. It only happens more in the manga, and she's not exactly opposed beyond overheating. Symphogear, anime, it's on Crunchyroll. You like mecha-adjacent magical girls? What about musicals? Symphogear is a fun combo of those and some absolutely wild story beats. It's not an intricately woven story by any means, but if you wish Meathead Shonen was about lesbians instead, it's right here. Technically subtext, but like, come on, they share a bed and Miku thinks Hibiki's ass is a strong point of hers. Know that it's got horny outfits and camera angles, though not near enough to be ecchi, and Season 3, aka GX, sucks ass, but I liked it plenty anyway. GX's issues can be solved pretty easily by skipping forward whenever a father figure is on screen too. Also note, I'm really missing some key entries here because my brain's 20 megabytes of RAM makes it hard starting anime. A few of the key Yuri action classics I need to watch are Noir, El Cazador de la Bruja, and Madlax. Know that they're often hailed as classic Yuri action, and also that I don't know enough about them to give a proper rec. There's also Read or Die. I watched the OVA, which was fun, but it's not officially available streaming anywhere as far as I know. Asumi-chan is interested in lesbian brothels. Manga. College girl on a quest to find her childhood crush by buying every lesbian prostitute learns the meaning of good sex. It's a fun ride, really hot sex scenes, and Asumi is a lovable dork. Eventually there are even some cute relationships, which are also full of sex. Gushing over magical girls. Started as manga, anime is on high dive. Ever joke about how kids shows are hilariously prone to using some extremely kinky premises to avoid violence? This takes it to the next level. There's still violence, but the goal of Beza is just to do kinky things to magical girls, and they do not hold back on the kink. They go AO3 on this shit, and it's great. There's also some great comedy, compelling character writing, and some of these pairs are just super cute. But be aware that these are textually 14-year-olds, so if that bothers you, do not try this. Is it wrong to lose your virginity to an android? It's manga. Office lady accidentally buys an illegal sex bot while drunk, and the bot is extremely down to fuck. The office lady, however, would prefer to keep a bit of plausible deniability. There's some fun and comedic developments as it goes along, as well as a bit of angst. Overall, very hot. Breasts are my favorite things in the world. Manga. What it says on the box, a girl is extremely autistic about the concept of boobs and enlists a big-boobed girl to help her get her fill. A big-boobed girl with an unsubtle crush on her, but she's too dense to realize it. It actually turns into a cute little romance eventually, but we know what the real draw is here. The beautifully rendered large tits. They are high schoolers though, so if you don't like that, don't bother. Moonlight Garden, manhwa on leshin. A premise kinda like Omegaverse in that there's women who go into heat and need to have sex with women to feel better, but otherwise almost entirely different. Really drama heavy and genuinely a good story. Intertwined neatly with the smut, of course. Also note that the flower women come of age when they're 20, so rest assured the MC is like 19 even though they talk about her like a high schooler. My Girlfriend's Not Here Today, manga, coming to English stores in May. NTR Yuri, but the partner getting NTR'd is also a girl. Cute toxic Yuri fun. Everyone involved here is so shitty, but in a kind of reality TV way where you can't look away. Uni is spineless, Nanase is bad at girlfriending, and Fuko is a cunningly horny bitch who can play Uni like a fiddle. For reference on finding more Yuri, Bookwalker has a Yuri/GL tag you can dig through for interesting stories. Just make sure to flip the show mature content switch if you want to see anything kinda smutty. With visual novels, itch.io, Manga Gamer, and Jast USA have Yuri tags to look through and don't put DRM on your games as far as I'm aware. My anime list has some stupid and inconsistent logic for what is or isn't Yuri, or shoujoi because they still use that dumbass term, but you can use it in tandem with other databases. At a glance, I think AniList, which is only anime, AniSearch, and Anime Planet are better bets. Also, as an addendum to the Horny list, I was looking for some anime I've heard of being good horny Yuri and learned that Valkyrie Drive either used to be on or is coming to Tubi. Seven Mortal Sins seems to still be on Crunchyroll, but in the recommendations list Tubi gave me for Valkyrie Drive, I saw that Yamibo is currently on Tubi. I don't know how the Yuri is in it, but I didn't think it was officially available. They also have Project Echo. I don't know if it's horny or how much it's Yuri, but I also didn't know it was officially available. They also have a lot of non-Yuri anime I've heard interesting things about, like The 12 Kingdoms, Paprika, and Ghost in the Shell. So, in general, as an anime fan, keep in mind that Tubi is a fucking goldmine of freely available anime. Old and new, trash and classic, porn and children's shows. Grab your friends to watch random Tubi anime for a fun time. You could watch Cardcaptor Sakura. If you get tired of it, you could also try Kite. Or maybe Aiken. Alright, that's far from a comprehensive list, but it's a start, and I hope from here you might get enough interest to get better at search engines and tag surfing. I will again ask people to avoid name-dropping piracy sites in the comments. If you really want to find a piracy site, they're not hard to find on a Google search. Though I would recommend buying these books not just because it's money for the author, but also because the official translations are 9 times out of 10 just so much more readable. Other than that though, go ham on tagging on Rex in the comments. I made this video to use instead of writing a paragraph every time someone asks, and more Rex means more effectiveness.